Maybe. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Happy Juneteenth to all of our family and friends, and welcome, beloved church family of the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Paul Pursuti, and I'll be your host tonight. I welcome you to our midweek oasis, our Wednesday night service. As you'll be able to experience tonight, our Wednesday night oasis is a place where we come together as a community to be spiritually refreshed between Sundays. Most Wednesday night services build upon the theme of the previous Sunday, sharing in a satsang style, expressing science of mind principles and practices with the intention that this gathering be informal, intimate, and interactive. Our annual theme for 2024 is a grand rising, and our monthly theme, titled by our own Reverend Dr. Sunshine Michelle Coleman for all the CSL this month, is Holy Boldness. Last Sunday, Reverend Sunshine introduced ideas inspired by the talk title of Unbounded and Unstoppable. And tonight, our speaker will continue the exploration of this very same topic. So as we gather tonight, I really want to welcome you. I want to welcome all of you in here tonight. When Reverend Sunshine first started with us, she invited us to come to the center well. And to do so, she said, use these 6 C's and consider and incorporate them. So the first C is compassion, which she means to be come with a heart of love and tenderness. Then there's communication. Come ready to exchange openly. Then she turns us to camaraderie. Come in friendship and family. Then she reminds us about communion. Come in harmony and ready to share. Then she asks us to come in collaboration. Come in partnership and cooperation. And finally, and the most important, she says, consciousness. Come in spiritual awareness and truth. So as we move into the program tonight, these 6 C's are the premise of sharing a wonderful evening with you tonight. If you're new to our community or watching our recording, please make sure you visit and explore our homepage, www.oaklandcsl.org, and click on the I'm New icon and look at the lower left-hand corner of that page to submit your email address. Once you do, you'll begin receiving the Village News, our weekly newsletter that will come in your email. It has all the information on what is happening at the center in the coming weeks. Before we get started with the talk, please mute your own audio microphone during tonight's service. You can leave your camera on. When you mute your audio microphone, it will improve the quality of our recording and tonight's transmission. Also, please stay with us to the end of the service, where I'll be sharing special and important announcements with you. So tonight, my heart is full, very full, because I just adore this individual, and I'm so glad she said yes to Reverend Sunshine upon the invitation to speak tonight. And she'll be speaking about Unbounded and Unstoppable. And that's Reverend D. Jacquelyn Edwards is in the house with us tonight. Reverend D. Jacquelyn Edwards is an ordained CSL minister. She is the founding spiritual leader of Platinum Butterfly Focus Ministry, which has its mission pollinating the spiritual nature of individuals, groups, and organizations. She encourages the use of spiritual principles for civic engagement. Through over 30 years of practicing and applying science of mind in her personal and professional life, Reverend Jacquelyn has consistently woven messages of equity and social justice through her ministry. and as well in her secular work in the world. She stands on the shoulders of her mother, who introduced her to science of mind at First Church of Religious Science in New York City, and her mentors, Reverend Dr. Ernie Forks and Reverend Dr. Eloise Oliver at East Bay Church of Religious Science in Oakland. Reverend Jacquelyn has served as the spiritual director of First Church of Religious Science, Vallejo, and as the community and civic engagement minister at East Bay Church of Religious Science, also in Oakland. She is a founding member and past chair of the CSL Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and has served on the CSL Spiritually Motivated and Socially Engaged Committee, and as an instructor at the CSL School of Spiritual Leadership. She is currently a member of the planning, program, and volunteer teams of the People of African Descent in New Thought Group. Their initials are PADNTG. And this group will present its second conference at Unity Village in Missouri from August 1st through the 4th this year. For additional information or to register to attend, please visit https://padntg.com. And by the way, this is her short bio. So thank you in advance for being our speaker tonight. We are so blessed to have you with us, Reverend Jacquelyn. As we do,
Thank you.
as we do,
I am.
as we do with every organized event at the center, we open with prayer. So, Reverend D. Jacquelyn, I say that with great gusto. Will you do the honors by opening us up in prayer tonight?
I am delighted to open us up in prayer tonight. And so I just invite all of us to just take a moment, put all the other things that we may be glancing at, playing with aside, and we're going to take a deep breath. It's just going to be just one really deep belly breath, I like to call it. And then we're going to exhale, and I am going to pray us in. And I'm playing a little bit with that idea of praying us in because it implies that we're out somewhere, but I'm not going to go down that road right now, maybe later. So collectively together, let us inhale and release at will. And if you're comfortable allowing your eyes to be lowered or to fall shut, I invite you to do so. As I and we individually and collectively remember and anchor ourselves again in the recognition and the realization that there is truly only one life. There is only one life. That life is called by many names, by God, by Allah, by the Shiva. It has many, many names, but by any name, it is absolutely all that there is, all that there ever has been, and all that there ever will be. As such, that includes each one of us, and it includes our exchange this evening. It includes our conversation. It includes all the ways in which each one of us participating this evening or participating as a viewer later on, all the ways that each one of us nurtures each one of us. It is with a humble sense of gratitude, both for this opportunity to speak this word, to be the speaker this evening, and for the, again, way and ways in which, while I may be speaking, we are collectively having a conversation of the heart, of the mind, of the spirit. And so, with a humble sense of gratitude, knowing that the divine is weaving itself in, through, and as me and each one of us, I release this word and open this conversation. the immutable, perfect, and impeccable law that always and in always simply says yes is doing a hoorah yes this evening. Thank you. Ashe, Amen, Amen, Aho. And so it is. Hey, family. I have to start there. Hey, fam. Just delighted to be here, grateful to be here. Thank you, Reverend Sunshine, for the invitation. Although Paul has already given us our annual and monthly and weekly theme, I just have to repeat it because it is so relevant to everything that's going on. And I am always amazed that this relevancy evolves in our topics and through our topics and through our presentations, even though they were created months ago. At least a year ago, over a year ago, these topics were decided upon, and the order that they would come in was decided upon. And then voila, here we are in this realm of perfection where we get to talk about holy boldness, holy boldness, holy boldness against a background of a grand rising. And I invite us to consider that that grand rising is rising into both our greater yet to be, but our greater yet to be that is greater because we are co creating it today. As I like to say, if you're on the planet right now, it is because you have a role to play. You have something to do related to shifting the entire planet. That's a lot of responsibility I'm putting on us, isn't it? But we signed up for it. We signed up for our roles in shifting the entire planet to that world that works for everyone. In my ministry, I say to the world in which everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And so when we hear these ideas of a grand rising, of holy boldness, of being unbound and unstoppable, we must remember that this is not something externally coming in, that Reverend Dr. Sunshine, in putting it on paper, was literally calling in the word from the ethers for us to collectively both understand, agree upon, and jump from into whatever is our next activity. And of course, again, as has already been stated, but I want to invite each one of us, wherever you are, to just do a hoorah, because today is the national holiday that is Juneteenth. And the hoorah is invited not just because it's a national holiday, although that's really important in terms of how that came to be, as well as why that is that expression and experience of Juneteenth. All of that is important, both in the Sankofa sense of looking at where we've been, where we've come from, so that we can take those lessons and apply them to where we're choosing to go, to where we are co creating, to the experience, the life expression that we are saying a great, big, warm, and juicy yes to. So let's look at these two words. And these two words, unbounded and unstoppable, are the weekly theme for this week, meaning last Sunday, and for today, because that's what we do on Wednesdays, on our Wednesday night service. We have the opportunity both to have an interactive conversation, which I promise I'm going to save some time for that because I am excited about the opportunity to have the conversation. These two words, unbounded and unstoppable kind of have an intersection. And what I mean by that is that their definitions are similar, and they are each one expansive upon the other. So, unbounded is defined as having or appearing to have no limits. No limits. There are no limits to what we as individuals, and most certainly going back to those C's, we as community are capable of doing as we, one, anchor ourselves in a consciousness of freedom. I'm going to throw that word out there right now. And again, we'll explore that a little bit more. But as we anchor in this consciousness of freedom and then use our both our communication skills as well as our camaraderie, which I'm going to call that our love of each other, and our compassion to collaborate, hmm, to our much greater yet to be for us individually as well as collectively. Unstoppable is defined as impossible to stop or prevent. So we have unbounded has no limits, freedom has no limits, love has no limits, equity has no limits, justice has no limits, and can't be stopped. It cannot be stopped. When I think of that, I think just a little bit on the edge of that Martin Luther King quote that's often used about the arc of justice being long, the moral arc of the universe being long, but it bends towards justice. It cannot be stopped. It is impossible to stop or prevent. And Ernest Holmes supports us in this idea that equity and justice cannot be stopped when he shares with us that equity and justice are faces of the divine, that they are another way in which divinity is expressed on the planet in, through, and as each one of us. But first, and this is how we got to Juneteenth, we got to believe that it can be done. We have to have at the center and core of our being this knowing that that which is that we are seeking is both seeking us and that it can be done. Reverend Sunshine says, if we believe in something so deeply and we decide to pursue it, we may feel a sense of freedom to accomplish it. There are no limits or barriers that can stop us. We feel, and feeling how we feel about a thing. How we feel about a thing is really what guides our motion as well as our action in the thing. We feel like nothing is holding us back. I invite us to just take a breath on that. Nothing is holding us back. We feel a sense of freedom to accomplish it. We are free to do the thing. Ernest Holmes says that real freedom means that we are created in the image of perfection and let alone to make the discovery for ourselves. Meaning that as we go out there and we see, I wonder if this thing will work. I am feeling like there is a need, a call on the planet, in the universe, for a different way of being in this area. There's a need and a call for a different way of being with regard to gender equity. There's a need and a call for a different way of being with regard to how we talk about, how we have a conversation about freedom in these United States. We are left alone to discover that we actually have a freedom of will, which Holmes says means the ability to do, say, and think as one wishes, to express life as one personally desires. Ashe, Ashe. Let's look at someone who actually took that idea, even though I'm sure she knows absolutely nothing about religious science or Ernest Holmes, but she took that idea and she said, I want to take this conversation about Juneteenth outside of Texas, outside of the state of Texas. We're looking at the picture of Ms. Lee, Ms. Opal Lee. This woman is 97 years old, and she is considered to be the grandmother of Juneteenth because she, I'm sure, with much support, but she decided that Juneteenth needed to be a national holiday. And she went on a 2-year journey to make that happen. As a child growing up in Texas, she and her family would celebrate Juneteenth. On Juneteenth, 1939, when she was 12 years old, a white mob torched her home. It struck her that that act of violence was committed on Juneteenth. And I invite us to consider that at that young age of 12, her mission, the seed of her mission was planted. She made it her mission to see that this would be a national holiday. She walked for miles and miles and miles, 1,440 miles from her home in Fort Worth, Texas, to Washington, D.C. She did this in 2016 when she was 89 years old. Now, I'm just going to pause there for a minute. An 89-year-old woman determined that Juneteenth would be a national holiday, walked at the rate of 2.5 miles each day. She took a 1,440-mile trek to Washington, D.C. And even in that 2.5 miles a day, that symbolized the 2.5 years that Black Texans waited between the Emancipation Proclamation, between when it was signed and the abolishment of slavery in the state of Texas. So, what we're talking about now is the origin of Juneteenth. Juneteenth started in Galveston, Texas. It started in Galveston, Texas on June 19th, 1867. Oh, I'm taking a breath and I invite you to do so with me. The state of Texas, the largest state in the Union until the state of Alaska was brought in, has a long and interesting history. The institution of slavery was brought into the state of Texas prior to Texas becoming a state. And it took a great deal of convincing of the Mexican government, who at the time owned that territory, who had anti-slavery legislation as part of their constitution. It took a great deal of convincing them to allow these settlers to come in and bring enslaved people to do the work that needed to be done in order to transform this state area, and particularly, interestingly enough, this area that is Galveston, Texas, into what was already thriving in the rest of the South, that is the cotton industry. When the Emancipation Declaration was signed, there are a couple of things that we need to know about that. That first of all, the Emancipation Proclamation freed everyone who was enslaved in Southern states, in the states that were participating as part of the Confederacy during the Civil War. So that actually means, and this is a topic for another day, another conversation, that there were states where enslaved people continued to be enslaved because they were in states that were not part of the Confederacy. So that's one point for us to know from a historical standpoint. Secondly, and this is a piece that is pointed out in an absolutely magnificent book called Juneteenth. Secondly, the state of Texas, and particularly Galveston, was the source of, was the site of one of the last battles in the Civil War. And that battle actually was won by Confederate soldiers. However, by that point, the rest of the Confederacy, and really including that battalion or that group as well, was so defeated and debilitated that surrender had already happened. Amen. I'm sharing this information with us so that we understand that there was a complexity concerning the end of the war and everything surrounding that. What we've learned and known for some time is that Juneteenth actually celebrates the time when the people in Texas, and the first announcement was made in Galveston, when the people who were enslaved in Texas formally, and again, that's important as well, because there was actually a underground rumbling and understanding that freedom had come, but were formally informed that the institution of slavery was over. And this is in the languaging, that those who were formerly enslaved are now equal to those who enslaved them. There is much more to this piece, but I want you to hear that piece, that there was an equality established by the legislation that actually, had it been completely and totally enforced at that time, we might have a very different experience today. And everything, everything happens in its absolute right and perfect time. And when the time is right, and ready. As we look at what it is that is ours to do, I invite us to consider this idea again from Ernest Holmes. He says, in our ignorance of the truth, we have misused the highest power we possess. And so great is this power, so complete is our freedom in it, so absolute the domain of law through it, that the misuse of this power has brought upon us the very condition, and I'm adding an S there, the very conditions from which we suffer. We are bound because we are first free. The power which appears to bound us is the only power in the universe which can free us. When we realize and recognize the power of the divine within, everything becomes a we got this. I was surprised when I looked at the actual legislative document, and Paul, I'm going to ask you to share that with us, that established Juneteenth as a national holiday. And I was so surprised until I must have spent easily 20 minutes, maybe another half an hour looking for something, thinking, there's got to be more than this. It's got to be longer. There's got to be something else, but it's not. It simply says to amend Title V, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America. This act may be cited as, you can call it, the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act. And it says simply that June 19th shall be a national holiday. Period. Dot. The end. Thank you, Paul. Why do I mention this? I mention this because it is just evidence of how quick, how easy the thing can be done once we have a collective will to do it. And the collective will to do it evolves out of the persistence of people like Ms. Lee. And oftentimes, it takes time. Oftentimes, it takes 1,000-mile walk, figuratively sometimes, but sometimes literally. I want to close with two quotes, one from our book for this month, Rest is Resistance. And we're looking at this in the context that if we're on this journey that may take us a while, then we want to be good stewards of this body that is taking us on that journey. The author, Tricia Hersey, says, I wish you rest today. I wish you a deep, deep knowing that exhaustion is not a normal way of living. I'm going to pause there and y'all need to say amen. Exhaustion is not a normal way of living. You are enough. You can rest. You must resist anything that does not center your divinity as a human being.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
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 Amen. And finally,
Yes.
and finally, again from Ernest Holmes, he says, freedom need never be ashamed of itself, nor liberty bow to despair. God is always, he didn't say sometimes, God is always on the side of rights, and faith will always conquer fear. Ashe amen, amin, aho, and so it is.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Amen. So it is.
So it
So
is.
it is. Yes, yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Oh,
Ashe.
so
The
Thank you,
Ashes,
Jesus.
yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you.
so everybody, let's go
You,
into
Dorothy, thank you.
everybody, let's go into gallery view. Please
Okay.
turn on your camera so that Reverend Jacquelyn can see how much we appreciate her message tonight. Let's show her,
Yes.
please.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank
Yes, yes,
you.
yes, yes, yes. Yes.
Do we have any questions or comments or thoughts that we'd like to share?
But I'd like
I have one thing. My daughter kept bugging me about watching this a movie called Origin by
Mm.
Isabel Wilkerson. It is awesome. And it's